Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and as always, we've got another great show for you here this Thursday evening, live here on the blogtalkradio.com network, and we've got a really very interesting show tonight with a good, not only a special guest, but a good, become a good friend of mine over the last couple of years, and he's going to be joining us. His name is Brett Cohen. You're, I'm sure, all familiar with him. He's a golf fitness instructor and Fitness Over 50 authority, and also the founder of NY Golf Fitness Guru. I'll bring him out in a few minutes, and we'll get into our discussion tonight, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. But in the meantime, I want to just remind everybody, of course, we are live tonight here on the blogtalkradio.com network from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. We'll be a little bit shorter tonight. Brett is going to be the only guest right now. We're not into the full season quite yet. That'll be beginning March 1st, where I'll bring back, of course, Coach's Corner. We've got the panel, should I say, all ready to go this season. The schedule's already filled up, and that'll be beginning on March 1st. So we'll be actually doing the full 2-hour broadcast. But tonight we'll have a good hour or so. I like to call it a fat 1 hour tonight. So it'll be going over a little over the hour. So I want to make sure that we get all the information in that Brett wants to talk about tonight. But let me remind everybody again that we are live from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on blogtalkradio.com. Best way to find it is to go to that network, type in Golf Talk Live up in the search key, and that will take you to the main page, and you can listen live with everybody else. But for some reason, if you're not able to join us live, just scroll down on that page, and you'll find the on-demand section. And in there, of course, you will find all of the previously aired broadcasts, including tonight's will be a little bit later on, and you can listen to them in their entirety there. You can also tune in and listen to the show or download it as a podcast at iTunes.com, Stitcher.com, and now TuneIn.com on all three of those social media platforms. You can find it there as well as opposed to the main network. Also, every week I update the show on a variety of social media, of course on Facebook on my personal page, but also on the show's page, which is Golf Talk Live blog. Make sure you have blog on the end there. And on my Twitter account as well, and my Twitter handle is Ted and Buck CEO. CEO, of course, is in capital letters. And as I mentioned on my personal pages, both on Facebook and LinkedIn, and my name is spelt, last name is Odorico, first name, of course, is Ted. So you can check out those social media platforms as well, and you'll get all the information about the upcoming show and who the special guest that week is going to be. And so I'm glad that everybody's able to tune in tonight because, like I said, it's going to be a great show. Let me tell you a little bit about the guest, and then we'll get right into the discussion. I'll tell you a little bit about what our topic's going to be tonight as well. As I mentioned, my very special guest tonight is Brett Cohen. He is the golf fitness instructor and Fitness Over 50 authority, also the founder of NY Golf Fitness Guru. He's been involved in the fitness industry for over 17 years and specialized in working with golfers and individuals over 50, and he is the only trainer in New York to hold 2 golf fitness certifications, TPI and C.H.E.K Institute, as well as 2 fitness certifications specializing in the mature population, the Functional Aging Institute and National Academy of Sports Medicine, and a senior fitness specialist. We're going to be talking about, our topic tonight is Be Prepared, Not Scared, the 4 things you need to do to put some sting in your swing by spring. And as I mentioned, he specializes in helping golfers improve their game, shoot lower scores, and avoid common injuries associated with playing golf. So today we're going to, as I said, we're going to talk about the 4 things golfers should be doing to be prepared and not scared for this upcoming season. So without any further ado, let me bring on my very special guest tonight, Brett Cohen. Brett, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ted. Thanks for having me on. Excited for the 2018 season and Happy New Year. It's our first show of 2018.
Yeah, Happy New Year, my friend, for sure. Very, very excited. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, Brett, you've been on the show many, many times now. You've been actually a pretty frequent guest. You've not only been on individually on your own, but also you've jumped in on some Coaches Corner panels last year and did a great job as always. But this year we're going to do things a little bit different. We're going to have you on independently just so we can spend more time on what really is, in my opinion, a specialized area, but also a very important area outside of obviously golf instruction, the fitness side of things. So we're going to talk about that. So Brett, I'm going to turn it over to you for just a second, and let's get the ball rolling here and see if we can help some of our golfers out there.
Sure. So as you mentioned, the topic is the 4 things that you should be doing to be prepared for spring season. Winter's still here. Spring is coming, and then, of course, the golfers know along with spring comes golf season. But unfortunately, most amateur golfers that are listening in probably will not be all that prepared for golf season. Unlike professional golfers that don't really have an off-season, amateur golfers do. Winter is the natural off-season, yet most amateurs don't take advantage of that. What I think is in order to perform well when you hit the links in the spring, you're going to need a plan. And if you ask the average golfer what their plan is to improve their game over the winter, it may involve getting new clubs or getting fitted for new clubs or taking a few lessons, but it typically doesn't include getting their bodies working better. This is an afterthought or no thought at all. And I think that the amateur golfer should be using the 2 or 3 days a week that they play golf in season to train their body during the off-season. The off-season is the time to work on their physical weaknesses, improve their flexibility, their mobility, their balance, and to use a progressive resistance training program with an emphasis on addressing the deficits in hip and core strength. So you want to use the off-season to plan ahead so you could enter the season confident and injury-free.
Right. Well said. So, Brett, let's first take a look at really a very obvious question, and that is, what's the number one thing golfers should be doing in the off-season? Let's get some right down to the brass tacks and talk about what they should be doing in their off-season. They've got time now, especially up in the Northeast where you are. It's obviously not quite warm enough out there to be hitting the links. So give us an idea of what they should be doing in order to prepare for the new season.
Yeah. So the first part of the plan is what I believe every golfer should do is to have a golf fitness assessment. I use, as you know, I'm certified by the Titleist Performance Institute, and I use the TPI Level 1 screen. The screen identifies if you have any physical limitations that can affect your golf swing. So what Dr. Greg Rose says, and he's one of the co-founders of TPI, is that if I could give just one piece of advice to golfers of all levels, it's to be physically assessed by a competent professional. A well-trained professional can identify key areas of weakness or imbalance and develop a highly effective exercise or rehabilitation program. It's no guarantee that you'll remain injury-free, as the golf swing puts incredible forces on the body, but it puts the odds in your favor. And that screen was originally developed for the professional golfer, and now it's used with amateurs all over the world.
Right.
So
what
one,
specifically
have a plan
is
and get a screen.
Right. Right. So what specifically is? Explain a little bit more what specifically a golf fitness assessment is, and a little bit more as to why it's important that our listeners out there get one.
Yeah. So the main purpose of a fitness assessment in general is to identify the possible risk factors for specific injuries that are common to that sport. For example, in golf, the number one injury complaint is low back pain, followed by elbow and then shoulder pain. And the reason these injuries are so prevalent is most amateur golfers are just not physically capable of performing the required body movements that are involved in a mechanically correct golf swing. So when something that is supposed to move doesn't, something that isn't supposed to move does. And that's what leads to irritation, inflammation, swelling, pain, injury, and if you ignore it long enough, and some golfers do, surgery.
Right. And also, I think, Brett, just to throw in here a little bit too, because you're talking about a lot of typical injuries that can happen, lower back pain, even elbow, shoulder pains, that sort of thing. I know primarily you work with a lot of the 50-plus crowd, but you've also worked with some younger, people out there as well. And there's a lot of preventative things that they can be doing. There's things that they can be doing now when they're a little bit younger that can help when they hit that 50-plus age, that is going to help prevent some of these injuries. So, in addition to the assessment, obviously there's some preventative things to do. Can you maybe touch on a few of those?
Yeah, so the strategies really are the same. It's establishing new exercise habits that they were previously unaware of. So regardless of whether they're young or older, I'm going to give them the same strategies. It's just that typically the younger golfer will adapt to those strategies a little quicker because their bodies are younger naturally. So the strategies are to learn how to do self-care, to prepare their body for exercise with massage techniques, with proper stretching, which includes both static and dynamic, as well as joint mobility exercises, and then fundamental core exercises. This is what I call the foundational principles of fitness. Before we ever talk about strength or power or speed, all of them are essential to, a good golf swing, but we need to establish the fitness foundation for everyone, regardless of what their age is. It's just that typically the younger person is going to adapt to those strategies a lot quicker.
Right. And, I think we want to clarify a little bit, too, that some of the common, I think, faults that we see when it comes to exercise programs that a lot of, and probably more so, obviously, the younger golfers, but even some of the older golfers or mature golfers fall into this trap, especially the men. They tend to do exercises that are not going to be beneficial for them out in the golf course. Maybe heavy weightlifting, as an example, or very aggressive type of workout programs, which is obviously going to make them more susceptible to injury, but also is not going to be conducive. So what are some sort of do's and don'ts if they're going to adapt some sort of a fitness routine? Some maybe just touch on a few things that they want to stay away from, and what is more going to be, as I said, conducive to helping their golf game.
Sure, and this is hitting on a topic we're going to cover a little bit later in the season, where we're going to dedicate the whole half hour to exactly that. But
right.
Just to touch upon it today, so here's what I found across the board over the last 17 years, regardless of age, is that the typical male client, which right now all of my golf clients are male, if
right.
they do exercise on their own, they gravitate towards and desire strength. And it's,
yes.
which of course is part of having a good golf swing, but it's typically not done in what we call an exercise world functional. So it's done in isolation, typically using the old bodybuilding methods of working a body part on a specific day, or even worse, sitting in a machine, which will detract from performance over time, not enhance performance. So ultimately, if they're strong but it's not functional, it's useless strength, because if you can't rotate and you can't maintain posture, then all that does is make the ball go further in the direction you don't want it to go. And that's typically what
right.
male golfers want, which is the opposite of what they need.
Yeah, and that's something, just as a golf professional, that's one thing that I see a lot, even in younger players. It's not certainly limited. Obviously, as we get older, there's issues with posture and that sort of thing, and flexibility. And I know we're going to talk about those in more detail on another show. But this is something as a golf professional that we see a lot, where the golfer's kind of slumped over at address. They're not bending in the right places, if you will. And getting into that good posture. And I know that more often than not, it's not a technical issue, more as a physical issue. And again, I know we're going to get into some of that a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, since we're talking about the golf assessment, so, you've explained why it's important. Talk a little bit about what does the screen specifically, obviously we know it's important to have, that golfers should have one, but what specifically is the screen looking for when you do this process? So
I'm going to set the stage for this by using a quote spoken about quite often in the industry because it's what guides the screening process and the exercise process as well. And it's that the body works in an alternating pattern of stable segments connected by mobile joints. And if the pattern is broken, something bad is going to happen. So to simplify that, we're going to look at the body as this stack of joints, kind of like a stepladder. And starting from the ground up, the first stable segment is going to be your foot. If the foot is unstable, then that's your foundation. Bad things are going to happen above that first stable segment. And where things kind of go wrong is the places that need to be mobile to produce rotation, and for that matter, for any athletic endeavor, typically are not any longer in the golfers that I work with. So we need mobility at the ankle. And if the ankle loses mobility, there's a good chance that it can manifest into knee pain, which is the joint above, which is the stable segment. When we get to the hips, the next mobile segment, the hips lose mobility, and that's a very common problem with most amateur golfers. That could carry over into low back or knee pain. Again, the segment above or below is what gets punished with movement. And then the next mobile segment would be the thoracic spine. And if the thoracic spine is not moving well, if it loses mobility, that can manifest into low back pain as well, or even neck and shoulder pain, which is the segment above. So all the screens that I use are guided by that joint-by-joint approach. And I'm looking for adequate mobility and stability in certain segments of the body, and that's what's needed to maintain the desired body angles in the golf swing. So that assessment allows me to discover what the golfer's imbalances and weaknesses are, and then they're correlated to common swing characteristics that are undesirable for the golfer, which is known as the body-swing connection.
Right.
And then once we know what the sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I was just going to add to it. What I was going to add and just say that this is something, again, that as golf instructors that we commonly see is a restrictiveness overall in the golf swing. But again, as you're pointing out, what the screen is essentially allowing you to do is to be able to isolate specifically where they're having the problem. It may not necessarily be in the shoulders or upper body. It could be in the lower body, as you said, ankles as an example, or even knee. And if there's a lot of restriction there, that in turn is going to hamper the ability to make a proper swing. And obviously, they're not going to yield the results they're looking for. Would that be pretty accurate?
It's very accurate.
Okay.
So there's 16 or 17 movements, depending on who's doing the screen, that look at individual joints as well as movement patterns. And if you know what you're looking at and you know how to read the results, it's going to clearly identify what that golfer's capabilities are and what's holding them back from doing the things that they want to do on the golf course, which is why they're in front of me in the first place. It's because, as I like to say, their body doesn't do the things it needs to do to play golf the way they want to.
Yeah, and this is a common thing that, again, that we see in the golf profession, and obviously that's something that we want to talk about as well, and we want to emphasize. Obviously my area of expertise is the golf swing itself, and helping the golfers that I work with maximize their abilities out in the golf course. But obviously I'm not skilled or qualified in the fitness side of things. So this is so talk a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, Brett, about as a golf professional, obviously for the most part, certainly some have maybe taken some courses here and there, or maybe have worked closely with a fitness professional a golf fitness professional like yourself, but they're certainly not, well educated in that area. So are there some things that we should be, as golf instructors, should be looking at when we're working with our students, and trying to isolate some of those areas, and then obviously referring them to somebody like yourself to maybe deal with the specific issues? How do we know as golf instructors what to look for?
Yeah, so this gets into one of the later points, but basically you need to know what those screens are, because as a golf professional, you're watching amateurs struggle with the movements you're trying to instruct them to do. And what's important about the screen is it helps you understand whether that person just doesn't get what it is you're trying to teach them, whether you're demonstrating it or you're showing video of someone that can do the movement, or they just physically can't do the movement. So that's going to eliminate a lot of frustration right off the bat, because rather than ask them to do something they physically cannot do, you give them the choice of working around it once it's identified, or saying, okay, here's the problem.
Yep.
I see you have trouble rotating into your back hip. This is what we're going to be able to do unless you change how your body moves. And that's kind of where we're going with this, is eventually identify that to the golfer and give them that opportunity to change how their body moves. Yeah. So you ultimately you're going to need
exactly
to
right.
learn some screens to be able to identify these limitations at the joints that you're looking at, which is most of the time you're looking at your hips, your thoracic spine, and there's movement patterns that you need to use to identify all those things.
Yeah, and a lot of things, unfortunately, for many of the amateurs out there, they tend to adopt a philosophy, if you will, of working around the problem. So in other words, if they've got a bum knee or a hip issue, maybe they've had hip surgery, in past years, and they sort of favor, if you will, or a sore leg. So they try to sometimes adapt, and sometimes that may be the only solution. But a lot of times through some exercise and proper training, they can regain some of that mobility back. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that as well?
You definitely can gain mobility back. As I tell, my older golfers, when I assess you, it's not to criticize, it's just to identify. We are comparing everyone to PGA norms. This is what we would like to see, because this is what the better golfers are able to do. But it's not expected to take a 60-year-old man and make him into a PGA professional or move like a PGA professional. But I could prescribe an exercise program that's going to improve how they move, for sure. The strategies work. Yes. It just depends on how much time they put in. So they are going to improve as long as they apply those strategies at the right time and the right place. And it's not just improving how their body moves, but this gets to one of the other points, is if they get their body moving better, they still need instruction, because the golf swing is so complicated that having the physical ability alone is no guarantee of success on the golf course. You have to know what to do with that body, and that's where you come in. That's where the golf professional comes in.
Right, and that's a great way to really lead into that, because one of the problems that we have, it's kind of like running a marathon or a race, even a drag race. If your body is not in good shape or is suffering, or if you're even driving down the street in your car, if your car is not properly maintained, you're going to have issues. So when we get students, and this happens a lot to golf professionals, we'll get students, young and old, but obviously more so in some of our more mature golfers, that will come that are not in great shape, that don't have any sort of regular sort of fitness regimen, if you will, and it's very difficult for us as instructors to get them to do some of the motions, as you pointed out earlier, that they're required to do in order to yield that success. So, we have a couple of hurdles to get over. First and foremost, we need to get them in that shape, and again, it's not a matter of getting into some serious fitness regime that they've got to be dedicated to 7 days a week. And I want you to touch a little bit about how they can sort of get the biggest bang for their buck, but also it's a matter of understanding that if they want to yield results on the instructional side, the physical side has to sort of work part and parcel. So let's talk about some things, if you wouldn't mind, and then we'll move on to another point. How can, for golfers that maybe don't have the time or are not able to be as committed, are there ways that they can still get benefits from the physical side of things that are ultimately going to help out in the golf course? So they've had their assessment, you've identified some issues, but again, some of our older golfers are not going to be out there, 5, 6, 7 days a week at the gym necessarily or doing a fitness program. What would you recommend that they do and consider doing in order to help yield some results?
Yeah, so for most everyone up front, the simple answer is they're going to need to improve mobility at these joints, at these segments that we spoke about, the ankle, the hip, thoracic spine, the shoulders, the ability to lift their arms up overhead. So it requires some knowledge of what exercises to do to help improve that, but that's going to be the baseline for most amateur golfers. Then that needs to be matched with stability exercises that help keep certain parts of the body from moving while other parts are moving. It's the ability to disassociate one segment from the other, which allows your body to create this stretch reflex, and that develops a more powerful swing. So in essence, they need flexibility and core strength if you want to narrow it down to its base level, but you still need the knowledge of what to do. In fact, I have a workshop this Saturday at an indoor golf facility, which is exactly that, understanding the fundamental exercises that are going to give you at least the foundation to get started on your own.
Yeah, and
I hope that answers your question.
And that's something. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was looking for. This is, I think, key. And as we talked about in the beginning, this is really the time of year. I mean, obviously, this is something that people should be doing all year long, but particularly for those that are not in an area that maybe the weather isn't that great right now, as I mentioned, up in the Northeast where you are, where you've had a lot of snow, a lot of blizzard conditions in many cases. Obviously, they're not quite ready into the golf season to get out there, although they can practice in some great outdoor facility or indoor facilities, up in your area. They're not really ready to get out there on the links, as I said earlier. So this is a perfect time for them to get the physical side and get that tuned up. But it's hard to get them sometimes motivated to do that. You're sitting around for a month or so, and you've had a busy year, and you want to wind down a little bit. And unfortunately, we get the couch potatoes where they flop in their chair or on their couch. What can you recommend for golfers out there to kind of get themselves motivated? What do you try to say to some of the people you're working with that help get them motivated?
So it's not going to be the people I'm working with because they're motivated enough to have found me and to start working with me. It's those other people you're talking about that either are unaware that there's someone like me that can help them, or they don't know how it's going to help them. And that is, well, what would you like your golf season to look like? Do you want it to look like last year's, or do you want it to be better than last year's? And if you don't have a plan, which is the opening, and your plan is, I'm going to wait till the grass is green and buy some new balls or get a new driver, that's not going to be effective in your game at all. So it's up to them ultimately, but there's a saying that there's no combination of golf instruction or equipment that can overcome a body that just doesn't move well. So you can't expect the equipment to do the job for you. It's the body that swings the club. And not everyone's going to get into the gym and work on their body, but at least they have the knowledge to identify that, and they have the power to make the choice what to do with it. Either work around it or break through it, which is the second strategy, is get to the gym. that was number two, to get to the gym. Yeah.
Right.
Because ultimately your swing is developed around your physical limitations. And if we can improve your physical capability, then there's a chance to improve how your body moves in relation to the golf swing. And that's what we're doing in the gym.
Are there some things as well where the golf instructor, obviously we're not going to take on your function, if you will, unless, we happen to specialize in it. But for, as I mentioned earlier, most of the golf instructors, their forte, if you will, is to work on improving things on the golf course, not getting them ready physically. But are there some things that that you've worked with other instructors on my side of the field, if you will, where they can kind of incorporate some things that we're talking about here with swing drills and some practice, that they're getting sort of a dual benefit? Obviously, the folks are still going to have some sort of a fitness regimen, but maybe some things that the instructor can incorporate in his side of things that are relatable to what you're doing, and sort of get that dual benefit. So at the same time, they're improving their golf swing, but they're still sort of working on some fitness fundamentals as well, and working them together. Is there something that we can do jointly that can benefit?
Yeah, there are opportunities. There are sometimes when both of us can be in the room at the same time. Fortunately, I have that relationship with a golf pro in New York who has TPI level 1, and before he took TPI level 1, he already knew inherently that the body's going to be the limiting factor, but he didn't know how to identify these body swing connection issues as we spoke about. We're going to do some work together where he's going to give a lesson, and we can identify a problem that golfer's having with a screen, and I could provide an exercise strategy, a stretch, whatever the case may be, and then go back and work on the swing. Because if you don't have an exercise strategy, whatever you do in the lesson, whatever drill you do in the lesson is not going to carry over outside of the lesson, which is one of the things that happens a lot. Is you'll see improvement within the lesson, but when you go out to play or you go to practice on your own, you default back to your old swing fault problem. That's because the body's going to be the limiting factor. So you need to do both, and that's where we're matching together. What the third step would be, even if you get your body moving better in the gym, which is the second step, you need to find a golf instructor that's going to help you now upload new software, take advantage of what your new physical capabilities are. Right. So even if you improve how your body moves, you still need instruction on how to use it. And removing the physical limitation just gives you the ability to hit a different shot, which is the fourth step. Now you got to link all that, right? Improve movement patterns, golf instruction with swing drills and practice, because that's where all this new information will get uploaded into the brain. The brain controls all movement. It's like software programming. It takes a lot of repetitions, as you know, to learn a movement pattern.
Yes.
But you don't want to learn a bad movement pattern because it takes 10 times as long to relearn a good movement pattern. So that's why I stress knowing what your body can do, trying to improve how it moves, get instruction, and then lastly, practice what you've learned with drills. So you got to practice. Golf is way too hard not to practice.
Yeah.
You want to do that until it becomes
I can attest to that.
Ingrained and natural. You can attest to that, right? So that's kind of the 4-step strategy is to get you in golf shape, and that will help you take your game to the next level and dramatically decrease your risk of injury. Because if you don't do those 4 things, you're just going to be playing with the same body you had last year. It's just a year older.
Yeah. And something, let me just ask you a question just on that. Obviously, as golf instructors, we want to be able to help, as many people as possible and have enjoyment and get out there and play golf as much as they're, able to. But the one thing, and I think this is, one of these things where it's kind of like the elephant in the room, if you will. I think one of the things as instructors we have to be careful about, and this goes back to something I said earlier, is that if somebody is experiencing whatever, physical limitations it may be, if we're as instructors just offering a Band-Aid solution by manipulating or offsetting that issue with some sort of a swing mechanic change, then really we're doing that student a disservice. So is it smart, do you think, for the student, and again, we're not trying to take away from the instructor's side of things. We want people to get out there and take some lessons. But if the person has definitely got some physical challenges, is it smart for the student maybe to hold off and say, you know what, let me get the physical sort of working a little bit better, and then I'm going to come back, because otherwise, as you said just a moment ago, they're going to be uploading a lot of bad faults, and then if they're coming to work with you, then they've got to now undo all of that stuff. So is it maybe better for somebody that's starting out this new golf season that maybe has some physical issues that challenges that they may have to overcome? Let's work on those now before you start connecting with your golf pro, and let's incorporate some good or upload some good things happening, as opposed to just reiterating the old stuff. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I can answer that based on a real life experience that I've had sharing a client with a golf pro. So I was referred a client by a golf pro who realized that this person had a lot of physical limitations, and basically he was just teaching around those physical limitations. And he knew about me and what it is I do, so he said, you really should see Brett. And fortunately he did. Now, it's somebody that cannot see me every week. I would love to see clients twice a week, because I could make a lot of changes if I see somebody twice a week, but that's not always possible. It's kind of on a every other week basis. Yet over the last 2 months, there's been some fairly substantial physical changes. And he said, well, I think I'm getting to the point where I want to take lessons again. How should we do that, or what's the best strategy for that? So starting in March, which now we're getting pretty close to spring, right? People are starting to think of golf season for sure in March, is we're going to do an every other week strategy. So we're going to work on improving how he moves 1 week. The following week, he's going to upload some new software with a lesson. And so we're sharing the same person. Is there room for improvement in terms of how he moves? Yeah, of course. Does he need to wait till he moves perfectly to take a golf lesson? No. We just now he can do things physically that he couldn't do 2 months ago, and he's ready to get instruction again. So it depends on the person. It's a little bit of a case-by-case basis, and the relationship that if you have one between an exercise professional and a golf pro. But, yeah, you don't have to wait till you're perfect to take a golf lesson.
Yeah, and that's my point that I was getting at. And obviously, I mean, there are some situations where an individual may have a permanent physical limitation that no amount of exercise is going to overcome. And, obviously we have some people that, whether they're servicemen and women that have come back that have some physical limitations, there's things that obviously we need to work around there. But, that's a whole different scenario. But, this is something that I think that as a golf industry, we have to be mindful of, and this is why it's so important to work with somebody like yourself in the fitness side of things, because, again, as we've been talking about, we don't want to, certainly, as you just pointed out, they don't have to be perfect on the fitness physical side of it, but at the same time, if there are clear and identifiable issues that this particular individual is dealing with, then we don't want to add to insult to injury by teaching them things in order to work around that issue and avoid it, where, like you said, maybe a month or two, depending on the situation, case by case, they could maybe come through some of those hurdles and then be able to deal with some of the challenges with the instructor. And I think that's really what you're saying, correct?
I think the most important word you used in that sentence was, you said insult to injury is injury. So the most important element of this is to avoid getting hurt, right? So if you teach around it, let's say it's a hip mobility restriction, and the golfer doesn't want to apply any fitness strategies, and you teach around it. Well, yeah, you could create a swing around that physical limitation, but that golfer's risk of injury is going to the low back is going to be real, and the knees, it's going to be pretty high. So the more they swing the club, the higher the risk of injury, which does them a disservice, because we don't want golfers in pain. Golfers in pain don't enjoy the game. They leave the game. And the whole idea of all of this is to keep golfers healthy and out there on the course, which is good for the golfer and good for the game in general.
Yeah, you're exactly right. All right, so we identified the fact that we want to ensure that people are getting a golf fitness assessment, and obviously you talked about why it's important. You've talked about what the screen looks for in that process, some of the things that, as a golf fitness instructor, that you're looking for. But as a consumer out there, I might be asking myself, how would I know whether or not I need an assessment? What do I need to ask myself in order to decide whether I actually even need an assessment? What are some things that might be going through my head or somebody else's in order to, how do we answer that question?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to get to here. The first and foremost is pain. So if you have pain before, during, or after playing golf, then first you need to see a medical professional, find out what's going on. We have to identify what is happening in the body that's causing pain, or at least what they're going to call it, right? They're going to identify it by name. But pain is just an indication that something's not working somewhere else in the body, because unless it's a trauma-based injury, the site of pain is never the cause of pain, right? Once you're out of pain, the screening process will identify the cause of pain, because the problem is typically going to be the joint or segment above or below the site of pain. Again, as long as it's not trauma-based. So that's the number one indicator. Does it hurt? Yes or no, before, during, or after golf. Second is if you're taking lessons, you're practicing, but you're just not getting the results that you'd like to see. In other words, you're not seeing significant changes in swing speed or ball speed or consistency. In other words, you've plateaued, and more lessons in practice is not going to be the answer. So that's another thing to identify. Are you making progress, yes or no? Also, if you work on a drill in a lesson and it helps you overcome that swing fault in the lesson, but it comes back when you play, then it's not the lesson. It's your body. That swing drill will not stick unless you change how your body moves. And lastly, whether it's pain or not, but if your body aches anywhere after a weekend of golf, right, and most of the guys I work with, when season starts, they want to play 2 or 3 days in a row, then it's time to get screened and to get fit, right? Because otherwise, not only your performance is going to go down, your risk of injury is going to go up, and your enjoyment level goes down. So those are the 4 things I would say, pain, plateaus, improvement, and whether or not you're aching after a weekend of golf. Not pain, but ache. It means you're just not fit.
Yeah, I mean, because we all feel a little bit of. I mean, I don't care. Even if you're, a younger athlete, you're going to experience, especially if you're playing a lot of golf, there are going to be some, a few aches and pains. But if they're persistent and consistent like that, then obviously there's more than likely an underlying issue, and that's, as you said, a good opportunity to get a screen. And I also like the fact, Brett, that you mentioned about plateauing, because that's an area that I think a lot of people, both the amateur golfers out there, but also as instructors, I think that we need to also be mindful of. Obviously there are other issues involved. I mean, if somebody's not improving their overall game, there could be a number of issues. If they're in pretty good shape and they're not having any physical limitations, then obviously that may be an issue that they're not practicing certain areas of their game. So that's something that the golf instructor needs to handle and maybe get them focused on other areas. But if there's definitely an inconsistency or there's a level where they're just not seeing much improvement no matter what we do as instructors, then that may be also, as you said, another opportunity to get a fitness assessment done to make sure that there aren't some underlying limitations that they may be having that are preventing them from improving. Would that be correct as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So from my perspective, my number one role when I'm working with a client is to improve how they move to reduce their risk of injury. The second is to improve performance. So if you're plateauing, you have a performance plateau, there's likely, and you're practicing, you're taking lessons, there's likely an underlying fitness deficit that's causing you not to get better, whether it's a speed, a power, a strength issue, whatever it may be, and that's things that we identify in the screening process. That's what's holding you back.
Yeah, and that's something too that, I think a lot of times, and again, I think this is why it's important as instructors that we need to be mindful of what to look for, because a lot of times, and I'll be the first to admit, as a golf professional, we can misdiagnose an issue. We might see something, in their game and think it's a swing issue or ball speed or whatever the case is, or swing speed. And it may not be. This is one of the other things, too, that I just want to touch on this, because I've said this many, many times on the show. I'm all for technology. I think it has its place. But I think as golf professionals, sometimes we fall onto the numbers too heavily with some of the technology out there, and maybe don't always identify potential underlying issues. So this is why it's important that we're physically keeping an eye on our students and watching what's really going on, and not just looking at a computer screen to see what the numbers say, because it's not always going to tell us or give us the answers that we need. It may give us a false reading, if you will.
Yeah, so after I do the level 1 screen, there's an opportunity to continue on, and there's a power and strength screen as well. And the power screens really tell a lot. They identify whether or not there's a power leak. In other words, we're looking at 4 power segments of the body, which ones are working, which ones are not, and whether they're consistent with each other. And I think that's very valuable for a golf instructor to have, rather than just looking at what the ball's doing in the air, because you can readily identify where the leak is, and if you fix the leak, then the ball's going to express itself differently.
You're exactly right. And something else, Brett, too, that I think a lot of people, and I'd like you to maybe shed a little bit of light. I mean, obviously, in the golf swing, the entire body is engaged. I mean, pretty much every fiber in your body is engaged in the golf swing.
Right.
But there are certain key areas that are more important than others. And I think one of the misnomers that a lot of people have is they focus on the upper body a lot more, and yet there's areas in the lower body that play a crucial role in the golf swing. Could you maybe touch just a little bit on those? What some of the areas are that people really need to be mindful of?
Well, the lower body is the key to a good golf swing. So golf is a rotational sport. It's a power sport. It starts with your feet on the ground. So if you can't engage the ground, you're not going to be a powerful golfer. So you need a strong lower body to keep your body stable as well as produce power. So it needs to be strong, stable, and mobile. There's a lot of physical qualities that are required. That's what makes it challenging. But if you're not using your lower body efficiently, and most amateurs are not, they're going to be what we call upper body dominant golfers. And those numbers are expressed in their power screen, where we see a chest pass, for instance, have a higher score than the vertical jump. And basically, the golf swing is a controlled vertical jump. As I say, vertical thrust is a must. So you've watched the long drivers, they actually leave the ground in a controlled manner, and that's where they get power from. So power is derived from the ground up. Another saying is the glutes are the king of the swing. You have to have strong glutes, largest muscle in the body, to create power. And most guys in their 50s and 60s are walking around with nothing in their pants anymore. There's nothing in the backside. So, what I mean by that. That's where their program begins, with mobility and strengthening their ability to engage the ground.
Yeah, and there's a whole other component that we could add into that, and I'm hopeful that later throughout the season or one of the other shows we'll talk about that. But there's also a nutritional side to this as well a little bit, and maybe we can touch about that on that maybe perhaps on another show, because that's an issue too as well, especially as we have an aging population. A lot of the key muscle groups start to lose muscle mass. And another thing that obviously a lot of our mature population is, especially for the men, is they start carrying a lot of weight around the core midsection, and that also creates a whole myriad of issues. And I know you've talked about that before on the show, but there's other components too that we'll bring in as well. But so, Brett, let's wrap this up. What's the ending thought here?
So the bottom line is, don't wait to spring to get moving. It's way too late to wait. Get yourself screened. Get into the gym now, so that when spring arrives, you're going to have some sting in your swing. And that's the title of today's talk, is put some sting in your swing by spring. If you wait till spring, there's not going to be much sting. Sorry to say.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. That's exactly right. Yeah, especially for, and I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, here in the Southeast and even Southwest, we're a little bit more fortunate. We have a much fuller season. But for a lot of you golfers up in the Northwest and Northeast, of course, where you're having some cold climates right now, you have a very limited window to play golf in your area anyways. So why wait until, as you said, Brett, the grass is green to get out there and get moving and get things organized? Why not take advantage of these cooler climates, do some things, work with Brett and others in the profession that can help you get things in the proper perspective, if you will, and ready so that when the grass is green, you're ready to get out there and start playing in a healthy, pain-free, hopefully, way, as opposed to waiting until you're able to get out on the golf course and then taking on some of these challenges, because now you're cutting into your playing time, having to deal with these. So let's deal with it now while you have the time, the free time, and get out there, and it gets you excited and pumped up. So any final and closing thoughts, Brett, that you want to add?
No, I think what you said basically summed up my introduction, and that's they need to take advantage of that fact that they're not out playing, and use that time wisely to prepare for the season rather than wait for the season to happen on them. Yeah, that's exactly it. Take advantage of the winter.
Yeah,
it's a great.
Yeah,
opportunity
and I guess.
Shape.
Right, and I think the other thing too, Brett, that you've touched about many times and today as well, is that want to avoid some of the common injuries that you talked about earlier on in the segment. Again, this is why it's so important to not just get screened and identify some of the underlying issues that you may have, but to start working and improving on your health in that now, because as I said, if you're not doing that now in the off season and you get jumping out there, which a lot of guys do, they dust off the clubs out of the garage or locker, what have you, and they get out there and they haven't done anything to prepare properly. And the first thing that happens, they get out there in the golf course and they're swinging that golf club, and suddenly, they've incurred their first injury of the season, and they're sitting half of the time out because now they've got to deal with a bad back or a bum knee or whatever the case is.
They could wind up missing the whole season just because they're not prepared. So it's like you said, the person that I'm seeing, which is probably the same person you're seeing, the common scenario is male over 40, sitting at a desk all day long.
Yep.
Their hips become stiff, their spine becomes rigid, and then when golf season comes on the weekend, they want to get up and rotate their body at high speeds 2 or sometimes 3 days in a row. It's not going to work out so well.
Yes.
It's just not. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
you're
disaster
exactly
waiting
right.
to happen.
Well, I'll tell you, Brett, what a great show. I want to thank you for stopping by, and hopefully we've helped a few people out there to get a good start to the season. That's really what this is all about. And this is sort of the pre-regular season, if you will. I mean, obviously, as I said a number of times tonight, that it's very early in the season for some, but this is the time to really get serious and working on some of these issues that Brett's covered tonight. And more importantly, get in touch with Brett. Brett, I'm going to let you tell the folks how they can do that here in just a minute. But get in touch with Brett. He's a golf certified fitness instructor. He's had many years of training and worked with many people over the years. So he knows what he's talking about. And if you really want to improve your game and become a better golfer, I'm not trying to say that, don't work your golf lessons in there as well, or work with a coach or a certified teacher professional, but you got to work on the physical side as well. And I don't care who it is that you're working with. No amount of golf lessons are going to deal with some of the issues that Brett talked about tonight. So this is why I really want to make an emphasis, because there's not enough emphasis put on this part. It's certainly becoming more popular and common at the professional level, but as amateur golfers, you need to take and be mindful of this area as well, because it is going to apply to you today as well as 10 years from now. So get in a good routine, work with somebody like Brett, if you're up in the New York area particularly, but with the advancements in social media, you can pretty much be anywhere in the country or even around the world and still connect with somebody like Brett and get some great tips and advice. So, Brett, why don't you tell the folks how they can reach out to you if they want to learn more and learn more about tonight's topic?
Sure. If someone wants to get in touch with me directly, the best way is to go to my website, which is nygolffitnessguru.com, and all the ways they could contact me are there. Email. So as you mentioned, I am in the New York area. I work with clients in Manhattan. But if someone's listening in from somewhere else in the country or in the world, they could find someone that does what I do anywhere in the world these days by going to mytpi.com and clicking on the Find an Expert tab. They could find people that are certified by TPI in fitness, in golf instruction, and in the medical profession as well. And there's colleagues of mine that have online programs available. I don't have that. I like to see my clients in person. But so you can work with people virtually, even if you're not able to get into a gym. So there's lots of opportunities to get better.
Yeah, and the very least, Brett, a good place to start if you're wanting to sort of not quite ready to jump in both feet quite yet. Maybe you want to learn a little bit more about it. Go to Brett's website. I know you've got a great blog. You've got some great information there and lots of great posts throughout your website and information and tips that at least will get the ball and conversation going, and then they can reach out to you if they're in their area, at the very least. And I think that's so important, is you want to get that conversation going. You want to get them made aware of it. So I know, Brett, you've got some great information available on your website. So make sure you go to nygolffitnessguru.com.
Thank you.
And I think that's
I have a lot of blogs,
and
then there's some wonderful blogs on the TPI site as well. I have one myself. So, yeah, that covers it.
All right. Well, listen, Brett, thank you very much.
We'll see each other in March, right?
Yeah, Brett's going to be coming back towards the end of March. I believe March 29th. It was the date that we set up. And we're going to have another great conversation in a little bit different area, but all about fitness, of course. And we're going to carry the conversation through because I think it's important. It's not only important to start the season, but to carry that conversation throughout the season with some key points and key information. And Brett may bring a colleague of his with him, so we'll find out that as we get closer to the date. But Brett, thank you as always for coming on Golf Talk Live tonight. Enjoy the conversation.
Sure, Ted. Appreciate the time. Appreciate it. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. That was my very special guest tonight, Brett Cohen. He's a golf fitness instructor, a Fitness Over 50 authority, and, of course, the founder of NY Golf Fitness Guru. If you go to nygolffitnessguru.com is his website. You can get lots of great information, as I said. And, again, we can't emphasize enough to be prepared, not scared. We talked about 4 of the things that you need to do to put some sting in your swing by spring, as Brett put it. A lot of great information. If for some reason you jumped in a little bit later in the conversation, if you go to the network blogtalkradio.com and type in Golf Talk Live or add /Golf Talk Live, you can listen to the recorded version in its entirety a little bit later on. But some great information here. Can't emphasize enough for you that have never had one done. Go and get a golf fitness assessment. We talked about some of the reasons why it's important. And they're going to be able to identify through the screening process what to look for and identify some of the flexibility or mobility issues and even stability and balance issues that you may be dealing with that are hampering your golf swing. I think it's something that everybody should have done, and I think it's something that you should do on an annual basis because you want to be able to identify those things because as we grow and age in our population, our bodies continue to change, and just because you're in great shape this year doesn't mean next year you're going to be in great shape either if you don't continue through the process. So it's always good to renew those assessments, but talk to your golf fitness professional like Brett go to nygolffitnessguru.com. And if you're up in the New York and surrounding area, you can reach out to him there and get some great information to help your game. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of the listeners worldwide for faithfully tuning in. As I said, we're kind of doing a light Golf Talk Live right now. March 1st will be my first official full show, which will cover the full 2 hours, bringing back, of course, the Coach's Corner panel. I've got a great lineup throughout this year. Many of mine and your favorites are coming back with a few new ones along the way, but we're going to have some great conversations on the Coach's Corner panel. And then, of course, on the second hour of the show, I'll have some other great guests like I did tonight. So make sure you tune in each and every week. And just to remind everybody how to get to the show, go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, or just simply type Golf Talk Live up in the search key. And you're welcome to call in anytime during the live broadcasts on Thursday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. The number to call is area code 646-716-4667. Or you can email me any questions or comments about the show. Or if you're somebody in the golf profession and you want to reach out to me, maybe you'd like to be a guest on the show, my email for the program is ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. So send me a note if you've got some questions or comments about the show, or maybe you've got a great idea for a show that hasn't been done yet or you want to expand on. I'm always willing to entertain that, and we'll see what we can do about putting something together. Or if you're somebody in the golf profession, don't necessarily have to be a teach professional or a coach. You can be maybe an entrepreneur. Maybe you've got a great product or service in the golf industry that you'd like to share with my audience, or maybe you've written a great book on instruction or another area of the golf industry. I'd certainly love to entertain that as well. So, again, reach out to me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. You can also download the show as a podcast on any of the other social media platforms like iTunes.com, Stitcher.com, and now TuneIn.com. It's available there as well. So you can find out not only this show, Golf Talk Live, but also the Women of Golf show that I co-host with my good friend, LPGA professional Cindy Miller, on Tuesday mornings, and that show airs Tuesdays live from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the blogtalkradio.com network, and it's also available on the other platforms as well, iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn.com. So you can get both shows, the Women of Golf, every Tuesday from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then Golf Talk Live 6 to 8 p.m. Central here on the blogtalkradio.com network or on any of the other social media platforms that I just identified, iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn.com. You can also get updates about the show as well at facebook.com/Golf Talk Live blog or on my personal page, Ted Odorico, and it's Odorico. You can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO, CEO in capital letters. That's my Twitter handle. And also on LinkedIn as well under my full name, Ted Odorico. Again, you can find me there, and I always update the programs there as well. Or you can connect with me if you want to connect with me on any of those social media platforms or sites. You're welcome to do so as well. So I'm glad that you joined me tonight, and I'm looking forward to coming back next week, next Tuesday. We've got a great show. Cindy is going to be heading down to Orange County National course in Orlando. She's going to be doing her boot camp with her husband, Alan Miller, of course, a PGA professional. And they're going to be dealing with some youngsters in this particular boot camp. And Cindy's going to be dialing in from Orlando. And we're going to talk to maybe one or two of the students that are there on the boot camp program that her and Alan run, and talk about some of the great things that we're doing. So make sure you join us next Tuesday on blogtalkradio.com network from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern. And then meet me back next Thursday night from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. I've got another great guest as we get ready for the full season. And again, March 1st of this year, Coach's Corner will be returning, so I hope you'll stay tuned for that as well. Got a great panel for the year, and I know you're going to enjoy some of the discussions we're going to have this year. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks to the many sponsors and supporters of the show. And on that note, I want to thank all of you one last time for really reaching out and supporting for all these years. We're in Season 6. It's hard to believe here on Golf Talk Live, but I enjoy every moment of it. Thanks for all of your support, and I will see you next week right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody, and have a great weekend.